Lata and myself, we are pleased to be part of this event today. I want the audience to go back 15 months, June 20 to March, June, February, March 2010. Life was very different. Everybody was going about their business, going about their work, meeting friends and family, traveling, enjoying holidays, and in short, leading a very normal life. Little did we know that there was something lurking toward the third week of March last year. And no time, things changed. And it changed so differently and so suddenly, most of us, if not all of us, were caught unawares. 15 months down the line, June 2021. How did this happen? We talked about the first wave, the second wave. I call the second wave the tsunami more than a wave. This happened because we were complacent. Certain poor decisions were made at the government levels, maybe. We did not become responsible for our behavior. And sometimes people had this attitude that nothing can touch me because I exercise, I lead a healthy life, and I believe that I can handle everything. I don't need anything to follow the protocol that were envisaged. But suddenly, by March, April this year, it hit all of us so badly and unexpectedly. And in the first wave, when we knew about events that happened at a distant space, distant locations, different cities, far away from us, some numbers. But today, in the so-called second wave, it has hit everybody. It has come closer to your home. And we thought it was only in the neighborhood. We thought it was only the neighbor's house is on fire. We are insulated. We are fire protected. No, it was suddenly all over us. It entered everybody's home. In this so-called second wave, every single person will know somebody, either in their close family or in their immediate neighborhood or their friends who have been hit so badly and large numbers of them have lost their lives. It has destroyed the dreams of people, future jobs, future admissions, future academic programs, all shattered in a matter of minutes. And when trying to put out fire, people got burnt. I'll give you a small example. A 32-year-old young man whom we know married about 2 years ago and did not have children, and they were trying to go through this IVF process. About a month back, his wife's father, his father-in-law passed away, and somewhere in different part of Bangalore. And they decided they should go and visit and say farewell to that elderly man who they wanted to go and see the body, send him off to farewell. They went to the crematorium. They came back. The wife said, "Why don't we stay back for one day because my mother is alone?" They agreed. They stayed back and came back home. In a matter of 4 or 5 days, he was hospitalized. He battled severe COVID, and in about 2.5 weeks' time, he passed away. And he was barely 32. What happened here? When we become less pragmatic and more emotional about, say, taking some decisions, we go to crematorium and see people, however close they are. And during that kind of a situation, virus is swarming all over us. We're not able to say proper farewell. There is no closure. Therefore, several things have been left unfinished. Sometimes people blame the virus, blame the scientists, blame the numbers. Let us ask ourselves, virus does not come looking for you. We go looking at the virus. When we go near it, it comes to us and we become very generous and we pass it on. We have to be responsible. Unless we are responsible, we will not be able to stop. It's an individual and a collective responsibility. But having said that, what you are facing today is this pandemic, which has led to several people grieving their lost ones, loved ones, near and dear, and they don't know how to cope with it. and the grief can extend to days and months. How do we deal with this collective grief and the numbers of people who have been hit so very badly? To take us forward in this journey today to discuss this very, very sad and a very poignant moment in our lives. My colleague, Dr. Lata Hemchand, will give you a presentation, after which we will take some question and answers. Thank you very much again for giving us this opportunity.
So at the outset, good morning to everyone. And I would like to thank Vishwas and Roshni for taking up this important topic for discussion, because I think all of us in some way are affected by this second wave, and we have people either near or far, whom we have lost. And it's affected all of us. So I think it's a very important topic. And without delay, let's get into it. Madhavi, can I have the slides? So, yes. So how do we cope with this situation is what we are going to see. Initially, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction about, of course, Dr. Kalyan Sundaram has laid the context very well, and I think I will take on from there. So what you see in the grieving that is happening during COVID times is a very unnatural process. It's not the usual way in which we grieve. So what is unnatural about it? One is that it is so sudden, like Dr. K said, it's a tsunami which has hit. So we are not prepared. Generally, when people go through, terminal illnesses or become serious with their physical problems, usually there is hospitalization. There is time to prepare that this person I might lose. So that mental preparation makes a big difference, which is completely absent today. So like the case that he was saying, I have also met someone very young, about 17-year-old, who lost both his parents. And suddenly, within a matter of a week, he lost the parents, and he is doing his second PU and finds himself completely, numbed with shock. He just doesn't know how to go about his life anymore. So though there are grandparents who are there for support, yet not having parents, which is the main anchor for this person, suddenly makes him lost. Okay, so the lack of psychological preparedness, then the absence of cremation and funeral rituals. I think all of us have watched on the television so many bodies, and then there's no place to complete the funeral, do the cremation. There's such a waiting list for that. And you can see the stretchers and people who are diseased. So the dignity of the deceased person, we are not able to take care of that dignity. We are not able to go closer to a loved one whom we lost. And there is a lack of religious rituals, which are very, very important for the grieving process. All of us come to terms with death and loss through these ceremonies. I mean, it gives you the time and the space and the meaning, to deal with this loss. Then there's lack of social support because people are not able to meet each other. I mean, the minute someone in your circle lost or is diseased, immediately the whole family, friends, everyone rushes to the person who has lost someone dear and to give that support. But that can't be done now in COVID times. So all of us are in our own shell, grieving in isolation. So that social support, which forms the bedrock of, resilience that a person can build, is lost. And then it's also fast paced. So the doctors will say that we have to make sure that the cremation is done early. There is no waiting period, and there is no time to express grief. So all this is very unnatural and makes it much more difficult than it usually is. It is difficult anyway, losing someone, but this lack of space and time to grieve makes it more difficult. And not being able to say goodbye. So most of the time we see that when there is someone deceased, the person who is very close to them will sit by the side of the deceased and express what they want to and say goodbye to that person, which is all completely absent. So like Dr. K.S. said, there is no closure, and this makes it extremely difficult. Can I have the next slide? So why are we giving so much importance to this grieving? What is so significant about it? So grief is a psychological process of adjustment to significant loss. So when we don't have that adjustment, it makes it very pathological. It can go to a pathological extent. So both Dr. K.S. and I see often that when the grief process does not take place, the person either ends up either with depression, major depression, or some other form of mental health problem or physical health. Both get affected. So this coming to terms with the loss is a psychological adjustment which happens, which should be given importance. So grief is definitely painful, but it is necessary for the person to get back to health. And grief reaction, according to Freud, who is a father of psychiatry, so he says that weeping dissolves the old system to be replaced by new. So this has to happen. If it gets blocked, then it leads to pathological, physical, and mental consequences. So what are the reactions to this loss generally among all of us? I mean, all of us have experienced it sometimes. Acute emotional shock. So you just feel numbed without any feeling. You become completely blank and dazed. Then there can be intense feelings of sadness, so crying, preoccupation with the traumatic event. So it keeps playing in your mind like a flashback. What happened, the whole thing, how the person got admitted and how he was in the ICU and you never had a chance to say anything to that person. So all this keeps going on in your mind and you keep mulling over the loss, preoccupied with the loss. So the intensity and the magnitude of reaction depends on many things. Some of it is, what is the personal significance I had towards this person whom I lost? And if the relationship and the emotional bond is deeper, then the grief is also that much intense. Of course, there are other factors which influence the intensity and magnitude, like if you've had a history of mental health problems earlier, then grief becomes more complicated. And if you have, other factors like not having had the chance to say goodbye, that also makes it worse. Can I have the next slide? Yeah, so I told you that when grief gets blocked, it leads to bad consequences. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross used to be a physician who worked with terminally ill patients who were affected with cancer in the 1960s, when there were hardly any cancer drugs to be treated so that the disease could be reversed or controlled. Such things were non-existent. And she sat by the side of many, many such terminally ill patients and listened to them about their experiences. So, when your death is, waiting for you, it is that you're losing the life that you created, losing the relationships, losing your job, everything. So how did these people face? And she came up with what is called the grief cycle, which is what I have described here. So there are stages in this grief cycle. So it starts with denial. So all of us, when we realize that we are losing somebody or we lose somebody, we tend to be in denial. We don't want to believe it. It's difficult to believe that I've lost this person. Then there may be anger that, doctors didn't do enough. Why is God not helping me? I have been such a good person. Why am I getting this in return? So all these questions and anger because of that. Of course, bargaining does not usually happen when a person is already deceased, but bargaining happens when the person is terminally ill or at the end of their life, then you want to, ask God that I will do this for you. I will do this puja. I will, donate so much. Please give me back my life. Or the family member might do this. Both are possible. Then the next stage that they go through is depression. So when the loss is imminent and you know that there is no escape, the person is no longer there, and therefore there is depression. Okay, then depression finally, when the person is able to deal with, then it leads to acceptance. So this is a cycle that one goes through whenever there is loss. And if they don't have this process of going through the cycle, then there is more pathology there. So similarly, there is another model of grief, which talks about outcry. So immediately there is a outcry that we can't tolerate this loss. We can't take this loss. There is sadness. There is overwhelmed with feelings. So outcry leads to denial. No, I can't believe this. This is not happening to me, and so on. And then it leads to intrusion. What do we mean by intrusion? It means that thoughts about the person keeps coming back. And then you have these flashbacks, like I was telling you, of the traumatic event which has led to the death. So intrusion and denial keep alternating. And then finally, the mind settles down to working through. So this is a healthy grief reaction that happens. But what if anywhere the person gets stuck? For example, at the level of outcry, if a person gets stuck, then they can go into panic. Some people faint, and then they need to be hospitalized because they just couldn't take this loss. Exhaustion, there can be physical symptoms and mental symptoms, both. They become delirious. So at the outcry stage, that can happen. And what if it is stuck at the denial stage? So this person who does not want to believe that this loss has occurred might take very drastic steps, like going into substance abuse or even become suicidal. The intrusion is often, if it continues and does not stop, then you can go into a frozen state and there is inability to act. All this can happen. And finally, if the grief process has gone in a natural manner, only then there is completion and acceptance. So this is an important step that has to happen, but which it does not get happened because of COVID situation. Next slide, please. So what do we need to cope with grief? I think the most significant thing is for the person who is going through that grief to express their feelings. And especially if they are in a daze or shock, and if you happen to be the person who is around them, then you can repeat the information in small doses in various times so that it sinks in. The reality of that loss sinks in. It has to sink in. And what can we do as bystanders who are watching this person going through grief? We can empathize as silent witnesses through touch, through active listening. So we don't need to say anything really. We just need to be psychologically there. So our presence as a support needs to be there, as a silent witness maybe. You have to reassure your presence during the time of grief. And how can you do that? You can, do small things like make sure that they have had something to drink, because they can get dehydrated. Have they had sleep? Are they sleeping? Are they eating? So small things like this, which need to be taken care of so that the grief does not become overwhelming. Then acknowledge those intense feelings as natural. So normalizing the grief reaction helps the person to accept it better. Sometimes people can also get very angry. There have been many instances where people have, sued doctors that you have not taken care of my loved one, and that's why they are no more. Or they get angry with God. I've had many cases where people don't want to enter the puja room, don't want to say their usual prayers. They don't want to have, they're angry with God. So those kind of things, I don't think we need to interfere. You just let the person be. You just let the person go through that reaction. It's okay. Next slide. Yeah, so I was telling you earlier that denial and intrusion phases keep alternating. And sometimes people go into fantasies like, no, I could hear his voice somewhere, in the house. I think he's still around, so the reality of the loss is still not complete, so there can be a startle reaction. So they'll be lost in their fantasies of imagining the person to be there. And then when you suddenly call their name or they just tap on their shoulder, they get startled. And there can be illusions. Like I said, they can sometimes hear somebody else's voice as their loved ones. Rumination, that is going over the same sad events again and again. Reenactment of the tragedy, so to say. That keeps happening. But that is required. That is required for the grief process. The frequent themes that we see psychologically, what happens to the person, there could be shame and guilt. Oh, I was not a good daughter. I was not a good enough wife, husband, so on, feeling ashamed of oneself, feeling powerless and helpless. Can't do anything about this. I have lost him or her, and I can't say the things that I wanted to say. Survivor guilt. Why didn't it happen to me? Why did it happen to that person? Why not me? Then there is a vacuum, an emptiness, a feeling of being doomed into this, vacuum. So there is loss of emotional anchor, which is what leads to that vacuum. So this person who was so dear to you is no longer in your life, and that leaves a big vacuum. There can be identification and merging with the dead person. So we have seen cases where people tend to have the same symptoms as the person who is deceased, like a heart attack. Symptoms of heart attack are mimicked by this person who is under grief. But we all need to understand that this is just a phase that they are going through, and they will come out of it. Accepting the reality of death and spending more time with the deceased, observing all precautions. I think in today's COVID situation, precautions have to be majorly taken into consideration. And even though, you're not able to touch the body, touch the person, I think it still has to go on. But spending a little more time might help them to accept the reality better. And maintaining the dignity of disease. So for any grieving person, it's so important that whatever that person who's deceased had in mind for his religious rituals, it could be something that he valued a lot, all those things are followed. And I think in these times, how much can be followed? I think we need to be sensitive about it. People who are helping them and following precautions would be very, very vital here, even in the funeral rituals, because I think among us Hindus, we tend to bathe the body, we tend to, do the puja and so on. So all those things have to be avoided, and this person who is grieving needs to be supported through that. Next one, please. So how do we help people who are far away? I mean, there are so many parents whose children are abroad and they are not able to come because of COVID. They may not have been able to come. How do you facilitate grief process at that time? So having telefunerals, so where you're able to talk about the person who is no more, what he or she meant to you in your personal life, and expressing it to another person who is also in a similar situation. That makes a big difference. And keeping that social connection, at least virtually, would help, because this person in isolation would, the grief can get complicated there. So I think grieving requires social support. So grieving gets completed only when the person starts making critical decisions. For example, who should go and, immerse the ashes? Or can I go? Am I in a fit state to go? And those kind of decisions, they start making critical decisions. That is the time when they are just coming out of grief, overcoming helplessness and getting involved in daily activities. So when a person feels helpless, it's easier if they can get involved in small chores of the house, whether it's cleaning or cooking or something which does not require too much thinking. So self-worth also goes down. Like I said, the themes that we saw, psychologically, you feel guilty, you feel ashamed, I've not done enough. These kind of feelings keep repeating in your mind. So your worth comes down. So some adaptive actions, taking responsibilities. For example, let us say the person had the person who is deceased wished that he should give a donation to some charity, or he had a lot of interest towards research in a particular area. So how can I make this possible? How can I take it up as a responsibility? That starts giving the person more, getting back to their self-worth. Reviewing their relationship with the deceased and finding new meanings through rituals. So even though rituals are not possible for the funeral, later on to carry on those rituals, especially I think religion and spirituality comes in a big way here. Most of us, I think, turn towards spirituality when we have had this loss. So I think each one has a different way of looking at it and coming to terms with it. So positive attribution plays a big role. So I think both religion and spirituality give that chance for you to have a positive attribution. Like I was saying, there was this person who lost her husband, and the husband was an author. So she decided she will take to writing. The incomplete work of his book will get completed. And she took that responsibility. So there was a positive attribution, even though there was loss of this person. Accepting limitations. For example, if we look at husband and wife and the spouse is lost, spouse is no more, then the other surviving one has to accept that we may not go on holidays. I don't think I can dream of all the things that we used to do together. So I am going to be, I'm going to prepare myself to go through this pain and verbalize that loss and guilt. Dealing with unfinished business, like I said, sometimes people, not only about the work that they have not finished, it could be debts that they have not completed, or it could be some conflict within them, which has led to kind of disharmony within a relationship, within their family or friends. It is possible that they had friction and that relationship broke. But this person who is no more always had in mind that I should ask for forgiveness. So the family member who is there could complete that unfinished business. And reviewing responsibilities to take up one's life again. So finally, I think we come to this step where we start looking at life differently and attending to it. Yeah, so that is the last step. Next slide, please. So I would like to conclude my talk. I would have liked a little more time because I think this is a very sensitive topic and requires a depth which I could not give. I'm sorry, but I would just like to end my talk with this. So dying is a natural passage of life, like birth, growing up, and old age. Each of these involve pain, questioning, challenges, and a deep struggle, and ultimately letting go. That's by Henry Nouwen. Thank you very much for giving me this chance.
At such a very, very critical time when there is collective trauma around us, you all have come forward to allow people to understand this situation.